It was one of those mornings that felt freshly washed. Soft sunlight, damp grass, and the quiet hum of sprinklers in the distance. I love that hour, when the world hasn't fully woken up yet, and it's just me, Charlie, and the sound of his paws brushing the sidewalk. These walks keep me sane. They're my little pocket of peace before the day tries to swallow me whole. Charlie trotted ahead, tail wagging like he had all the happiness in the world. I smiled, breathing in that calm that never seems to last long enough. We reached the old oak tree, the one that leans just slightly toward the bench beneath it. I bent down to tighten Charlie's leash when I heard a woman's voice. Cheerful, easy. "He's adorable. I always see him here. Such a good boy," she said, closing her book and flashing me a friendly smile. I laughed softly, brushing some hair from my face. "Thank you. He loves this park. We come every morning." She tilted her head, her expression innocent. "Oh, really? I thought he usually came in the afternoons, with the man and the young woman." For a moment, I didn't even register what she said. Then the words sank in like ice water down my spine. I straightened up, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to keep my voice calm. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" The woman smiled, clearly unaware of the grenade she'd just dropped into my morning. "Oh, nothing bad," she said quickly, waving her hand as if to soften it. "I just often see them. The man, tall, brown hair, beard, and a pretty brunette girl. They bring him treats every week." Her words came out so casually, like she was talking about the weather, but I felt every syllable land in my stomach like a punch. Tall, brown hair, beard. That was Ryan. My Ryan. I forced a smile so tight it hurt my cheeks. "Oh, that's nice." "I didn't know," I managed to say, pretending to sound amused, even grateful. My throat felt dry, my pulse uneven, but I nodded like everything was perfectly fine. Charlie wagged his tail beside me, blissfully unaware that the ground had just shifted beneath us. I mumbled something polite, tugged on his leash, and started walking away before my face could betray me. As we moved down the path, my thoughts spun so fast I could barely breathe. A young woman, with my husband, and my dog. My heart was hammering so hard it drowned out the birds. I could feel the leash digging into my palm, the air suddenly too heavy to swallow. Every step felt mechanical. Walk, breathe, pretend. I kept my head high, but inside, something had cracked wide open. By the time I reached the end of the park, my hands were shaking so badly I had to stop and steady them on Charlie's back. He looked up at me, tongue out, eyes bright, pure trust staring right at me. And that hurt even more. Because now I couldn't stop picturing Ryan here, tossing the same ball, walking the same path, only not with me. The thought was unbearable, like someone had quietly stolen something sacred and left me the empty wrapping. The rest of the walk blurred into fragments, a barking dog in the distance, a child laughing, the wind brushing my hair against my face. But my mind was elsewhere, piecing together timelines I didn't want to see. Afternoons, treats, laughter, it all fit too easily. Maybe it was innocent, maybe it wasn't. But I knew one thing. My stomach never twisted this way when something was harmless. Instinct doesn't lie. People do. When I finally turned onto my street, I saw our house bathed in morning light, calm and ordinary, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The door, the flowers I'd planted by the steps, even the sound of Ryan's car in the driveway, they all suddenly felt foreign. I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on Charlie's leash. Whatever this was, I wasn't going to ignore it. Not this time. When I got home, I tried to play it cool. The kitchen smelled like coffee and toast, and Ryan was there, standing by the counter with that easy smile that used to make me feel safe. "Hey, sweetheart, how was the walk?" he asked, like nothing in the world was wrong. My heart stuttered, but my voice came out steady. "Nice. Saw some new faces." He chuckled, pouring more coffee. "Yeah? Anyone interesting?" I looked straight at him and said softly, "Maybe one or two." He didn't notice the way I said it. Or maybe he chose not to. That's the thing about Ryan. He's always been confident in his ability to charm, to smooth over cracks with a grin and a quick kiss on the cheek. For a moment, I almost wanted to believe that woman was mistaken, that her eyes had played tricks on her. But the image of him, with her, feeding Charlie treats, was carved too deep to ignore. Every smile from him now felt staged, like a scene in a play I hadn't auditioned for. That night, I couldn't sleep. Ryan's breathing was steady beside me, calm, unbothered, a sound that used to comfort me but now felt like a taunt. I stared at the ceiling, counting seconds between heartbeats, replaying the stranger's words until they became a haunting rhythm. My chest felt tight, my mind louder than the quiet room around us. If he was lying, I needed to know. I wasn't going to confront him with tears this time. I'd confront him with truth. The next morning, I moved through the house like everything was fine. I made breakfast, fed Charlie, asked Ryan about his day, all the usual things, but with a new layer of calculation behind every word. I was listening, not to what he said, but to how he said it. He was relaxed, maybe too relaxed, scrolling through his phone while sipping his coffee. I studied the way his eyes didn't meet mine for long. I'd once found that kind of confidence attractive. Now, it just made me suspicious. Later that afternoon, I decided to test him. I waited until he was leaning against the kitchen counter, typing an email before I said, "Hey, Rye, I might take Charlie for an afternoon walk tomorrow. Wanna come?" The pause that followed told me more than any confession ever could. He looked up just a little too fast, his tone a touch too rehearsed. "Can't, babe. I've got a client meeting at 4. You know how it is." He smiled, casual, dismissive, the perfect performance. "Of course," I said quietly, returning the smile he expected. But inside, my thoughts were already miles ahead. I remembered every time he'd come home later than usual, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. Every vague meeting that didn't add up. I wasn't crazy. I was connecting dots. This time, I wasn't going to ask for honesty. I was going to find it. My heart might have been breaking, but my resolve had never felt stronger. That night, I lay awake, tracing invisible shapes on the sheets, my mind spinning in circles. The clock's ticking felt louder than it should, each second dragging the truth closer. Ryan turned in his sleep, mumbling something I couldn't make out, and I just watched him. I wondered how long he'd been lying to me. Was it weeks? Months? Or had I simply refused to see what was right in front of me? The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how easy it had become for him. By morning, my nerves had settled into something sharper. Focus. I brewed coffee, fed Charlie, and smiled through the quiet hum of our routine. Ryan kissed me goodbye before work, his lips brushing my forehead like he was touching something fragile. "Love you," he said, already halfway out the door. I looked at him and replied softly, "I know." It wasn't a confession. It was a warning, though he didn't hear it that way. Once the door closed, I sat on the couch with my coffee going cold in my hands. I thought about the stranger's words, about Ryan's too smooth answers, and about the one thing I still had, proof waiting to be found. My heart ached, but beneath that ache, something new was forming. Resolve. If he was lying to me, I'd uncover every detail. At 4 o'clock tomorrow, he wouldn't see me coming. The next day felt heavier than usual, like even the air knew what was coming. I worked from home, pretending to focus on spreadsheets and emails, but my eyes kept darting to the clock. Every tick felt louder, every minute slower. Charlie lay at my feet, head resting on his paws, blissfully unaware that his next walk might expose everything. At 3:45, I finally stood, grabbed my keys, and whispered, "Come on, buddy, let's find out." Ryan thought he was clever. Months ago, I'd suggested installing a GPS tracker in his car, for safety. He'd agreed, not realizing that safety can mean a lot of things. I opened the app on my phone, my hands trembling slightly. The little dot started to move, not toward the office, but toward the park. Our park. My stomach twisted. The truth was unfolding quietly, like a wound reopening under soft light. I drove slowly, careful not to get too close. My pulse matched the hum of the engine, steady but violent. When I finally parked across the street from the park, I could already feel the sting of what I was about to see. The wind outside rattled the car window, and for a split second, I almost turned back. But then I remembered her voice. The man with the beard and the brunette girl. And I stayed. It didn't take long. Just a few minutes later, Ryan's car pulled up to the far side of the park, the same spot where we used to throw Charlie's ball together. My heart started pounding so hard I thought he might hear it from across the street. Then I saw her, a young woman in a floral dress, hair tied back, her laughter cutting through the still air. She looked carefree, like she had no idea she was standing in the middle of someone else's marriage. Ryan got out, casual as ever, holding Charlie's leash like it belonged to him. Charlie wagged his tail, happy and innocent, running to her like they'd done this 100 times. I watched Ryan hand her a little treat bag, the same brand I always bought, and then stroke her hair. That single gesture broke something in me. The way his fingers moved so gently, so familiarly, made my stomach twist. He was rehearsing affection with someone else, using my dog as the prop. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My body felt detached, like I was floating above the scene, watching someone else's heartbreak. I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling, and took a few photos, not out of revenge, but out of disbelief. I needed proof that this wasn't just in my head. Ryan leaned closer to her, whispering something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, it made her smile. And that smile was the nail in the coffin of who I used to be. I sat there for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. Watching them together was torture, like staring at a painting of a life that used to be mine. I noticed everything, how Ryan leaned in when she laughed, how he brushed something from her shoulder, how comfortable it all looked. This wasn't a mistake. This was routine. My stomach clenched with the realization that I had been erased quietly, replaced without ceremony. Charlie's tail wagged, his happy bark cutting through the numbness inside me. I wanted to hate Ryan, to hate her, but all I could feel in that moment was exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones. I whispered to myself, "You used my dog to impress your mistress." The words burned as they left my lips. I took one last photo and lowered the phone, my hand trembling. Charlie deserved better than to be part of this ugliness. So did I. I didn't confront him there. Not yet. The part of me that once acted on impulse had gone quiet. Revenge, I realized, isn't about noise, it's about precision. I drove home in silence, the steering wheel slick under my palms, my mind already rewriting the next chapter. Ryan had built his affair on lies wrapped in comfort, and I was going to make sure comfort was the first thing he lost. That evening, I slipped back into character. Dinner sizzling on the stove, soft jazz in the background, everything looked perfectly normal. Ryan walked in, loosened his tie, and kissed my cheek like he hadn't just spent the afternoon betraying me. "Meeting went great," he said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Client loved the proposal." I nodded, stirring the pasta, the aroma of garlic and basil masking the bitter taste in my mouth. "I'm glad," I told him. "You deserve some relaxation." He smiled, that same easy grin I once found irresistible. "You're amazing," he said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I met his eyes then, really looked at him, at the man who could lie so effortlessly while standing 3 feet from the woman who knew everything. "Neither do I," I whispered, handing him his plate. He didn't catch the weight behind the words. Maybe he never really listened to me in the first place. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table under the dim light, the photos spread out like evidence in a courtroom. Ryan, the young woman, and Charlie, my family twisted into something unrecognizable. I stared at them for a long time, my emotions shifting from grief to focus. I didn't want to scream. I wanted him to feel what I had felt, blindsided, powerless, exposed. Revenge wasn't a flame anymore. It was a blueprint. The next morning, I woke up before him. The house was still, sunlight slipping through the curtains in thin lines across the floor. I made coffee and sat at the table again, the photos now sealed inside a decorative envelope I'd chosen carefully. Something elegant, almost romantic. On the front, in my neat handwriting, I wrote, "For my favorite dog-walking partner." I smiled as I sealed it shut. It looked innocent, but it held the quiet weight of truth waiting to detonate. For the next 2 days, I acted the part of the perfect wife. I laughed at his jokes, asked about work, even planned a dinner for Friday night when his parents were coming over. He was relaxed, chatty, the way people are when they think they've gotten away with something. Every "I love you" he tossed my way felt hollow, like an echo bouncing off empty walls. I matched his performance flawlessly, and for the first time, I realized how easy it was to lie when your heart had already gone cold. By Friday evening, everything was in place. The table was set, candles flickering softly, wine breathing in the decanter. Ryan's parents adored me, and I made sure the night began like every other. Polite conversation, laughter, stories about Charlie. Ryan looked proud, unaware that pride is always the first step before a fall. Halfway through dinner, I smiled and said sweetly, "Oh, Ryan, before I forget, I got you something. It's on your desk." He looked surprised, but amused, wiping his hands with a napkin. "A gift? For me?" he asked, flashing that charming grin that used to melt me. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady, playful even. "It's on your desk." He got up, kissed my temple, and left the table. I took a slow sip of wine, feeling the air shift. His mother was talking about her garden, but I barely heard her. Then came the silence, the heavy, unmistakable kind that fills a room before chaos hits. Ryan's mother frowned first. "Ryan, what is this?" Her voice carried down the hallway like a sharp blade. His father turned his head, confused, and then Ryan appeared in the doorway, holding the open envelope in one trembling hand, the photos spilling like confessions onto the floor. "Mom, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, his voice cracking. I rose slowly, every movement deliberate, and said softly, "No, Ryan, it's exactly what it looks like." I set down my wine glass and met his eyes, not with anger, but clarity. "You cheated on me," I said, my tone calm, almost gentle. "With our dog." The room froze. His mother gasped, his father's fork clattered against the plate, and Ryan just stood there, exposed, stripped of every excuse he thought he had. I walked past him toward the door, the quiet hum of my pulse steadier than it had been in weeks. This wasn't the end. Not yet. But it was the beginning of his unraveling. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I heard his footsteps rushing behind me. "Emily, wait! Please!" His voice was desperate now, stripped of the smooth confidence he wore like armor. I stopped by the front door, coat half on, and turned just enough to see the panic in his eyes. "I made a mistake," he said, reaching out, but I stepped back. "You made a choice," I replied, my words cutting through the silence like glass breaking. For once, he didn't have a comeback ready. He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had deflated him. "It didn't mean anything," he pleaded, his voice trembling. I almost laughed, the absurdity of it all. "It meant enough for you to use the one creature who loves you unconditionally as your cover story," I said. The words came out calm, steady, but inside I was shaking. Part rage, part grief, part relief. He had taken something pure, my trust, my dog's innocence, and turned it into a prop for his lies. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing, muttering half apologies that sounded like rehearsed lines. I slipped on my coat, grabbed Charlie's leash from the hook, and opened the door. The night air felt cold and clean, like a reset button waiting to be pressed. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice breaking. I turned to him one last time. "To take Charlie for a walk," I said. "Alone. For the last time, as your wife." The street was silent except for the soft click of Charlie's paws against the pavement. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but it felt good. Honest. Cleansing. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear anymore. From release. I walked past the park where it all began, the shadows stretching long across the path. Charlie trotted beside me, tail swaying like nothing had changed, and maybe for him, nothing had. For me, everything had. I thought about the years I'd spent building a life around Ryan, every meal, every plan, every compromise disguised as love. It's strange how betrayal can bring clarity faster than affection ever did. The silence between me and Charlie felt comfortable, loyal, real. I breathed it in like oxygen. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to hold anything together. I was letting it fall apart, and it didn't destroy me. It freed me. When I finally turned back home, I wasn't returning to Ryan. I was returning to myself. The house looked the same from the outside, but it no longer belonged to us, only to the version of me that survived him. I opened the door, unclipped Charlie's leash, and sat on the floor beside him, burying my face in his fur. "We're okay," I whispered, more to myself than to him. And for the first time, I almost believed it. The next few days passed in fragments. Quiet mornings, unanswered calls, and the soft sound of Charlie breathing beside me while I packed a few essentials. Ryan tried reaching out at first, his messages swinging wildly between apologies and anger. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. You can't reason with someone who taught you how to doubt your own sanity. I wasn't looking for closure anymore. I was building distance, one silent hour at a time. It's strange how quickly peace can creep back in once you stop fighting for explanations. The house grew quieter, lighter, almost kinder without his energy filling every room. I noticed the small things again, the smell of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight hit the curtains, Charlie's snore during afternoon naps. It felt like rediscovering my own heartbeat after years of listening to someone else's rhythm. Loss, I realized, can sound a lot like freedom when it's honest. One evening, I stood by the window watching the sky fade into shades of gold and violet. Charlie nudged my hand with his nose, as if reminding me that the world was still moving, still full of small good things. "We're going to be okay," I told him softly. And for the first time, it wasn't wishful thinking. It was a promise. One I intended to keep. Months later, Charlie and I found a new park, one we'd never walked before. It wasn't fancy or big, but it felt untouched by the memories that used to weigh me down. The air smelled like pine and rain-soaked grass, and the laughter of strangers carried through the open space like music. Charlie tugged at his leash, excited, curious, alive. Watching him, I realized how much we'd both changed. Healing doesn't come all at once. It shows up quietly, in moments like these. A man walking his dog passed by and smiled. "Beautiful dog," he said. "What's his name?" For a second I hesitated, not out of fear but out of habit. Then I smiled back. "Charlie," I said. "He's been through a lot, but we're doing better now." The man nodded warmly. "He's lucky to have you." I looked down at Charlie, tail wagging, eyes bright. "Actually," I said, "I think I'm the lucky one." As we kept walking, the world felt open again. Not perfect, but possible. I didn't look over my shoulder, didn't think about Ryan, didn't replay old conversations. That chapter was closed. Ahead of me, sunlight spilled through the trees, and